with that, I do want to turn it over to Chairman Battles for this meeting, and thanks for hosting us here.
I'll tell you what, we can do that. Since I'm not having to share this with a lot of people, committee members, since they're not here. Thank you for coming. And this was confused from the very beginning. I was told this room was not available at 2 o'clock. Whether it would matter to those that are absent, I don't know. But many of our, on the House side, are having to meet because they also serve on education, and there's a number of very important education bills that are being voted on in that committee and being heard and voted on today. So that's the reason we have a number of people that are absent, and we'll take care of voting on our rules the next time we meet. I want to just take a moment to introduce some people that you probably are already familiar with, and especially for the House and Senate Committee. We have been blessed. Where is David? Where's David? David has been here since the Capitol was built, and he served as legislative counsel to those who came up in the wagons years ago. No, I don't know. How many years have you been here? 27 years. And I will tell you, he has been wonderful. He has kept us straight. And he is here really he said last year it was his last year, but he is back because we now have Blake Travis, who's back here, who is going to be legislative counsel to this committee, and we're excited. He comes with a great deal of experience, and he will be very beneficial, and I'm glad that David has considered staying around this year for this transition. So, David, we hate to see you go after this year, but Blake, we're looking forward to working with you in the years to come. Also, I want to, you might want to introduce to this group your assistant, or that person that keeps you straight.
Sure.
You want to do that, and then
I'll go ahead and do that. I've got Kathleen Kaminsky here, who has been around almost as long as the retiring one, I think. But I moved into her office this year because I realized she knew where all the bodies were buried, and I wanted to be close to her and learn everything. And then our aide for this session is Ashley. I want to say Daffrin, but it's Waller now with being married, I think. A recent graduate of Georgia Tech in aerospace engineering. So we didn't want a political science major. We decided to go, with tech. Even though I went to Georgia, I'm getting used to having a tech person around. They're going to be helping us on the Senate side, and we're real happy to have them here. And since we're kind of small, we could have our Senate members introduce themselves.
That would be great.
That. Let's see. I believe you're probably about Mike 8, I'm going to guess.
This one's 8.
Well, we'll do them all. Go ahead, Senator Rhett.
Good afternoon, everybody. Senator Rhett. Everybody calls me Doc. I'm a rookie here. I got broken in already. When I first started, Senator Vincent Ford told me because I'm in the military, when the governor comes through, I was supposed to stand up and salute him. I stood up, but I didn't salute him. But I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Just home.
I'm Ellis Black. I'm from the 8th District, which is right down in South Georgia. I'm a freshman in the Senate, but I served on this committee in the House here a few years ago. So I've dealt with retirement issues. Thank you.
All right, Chairman Battles, if you want to introduce your members, maybe.
Okay. We'll start over here on this side, and with Tyrone. Would you start, and then we'll go
happy to.
around the room.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I am honored to be on this committee with you. I've been on this committee 35 years.
I know it. You've been here for a while.
Starting out with Bill Cummings when we first came in together in 1980. It's been an interesting committee to work on for 35 years.
You and David probably came in about the same time, didn't you?
I
No.
thought David was here when I came, but maybe not. He's been with me a long time. I'm glad to see him today.
Thank you. David?
I'm Debbie Buckner, and I represent Harris, Talbot, Meriwether, and Muskogee, Columbus. I knew I'd left one out. I do that sometimes. And I've been on the committee for 10 years.
I'm David Wilkerson, 38th House District, Cobb County. I guess this is my 5th year on the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I think that's probably out of, from the House and Senate, maybe 30 members. This is all you got today. One of the individuals that is always important, of course, is our interns. And we've got a great intern from Georgia Southern that was being recognized on the podium yesterday. Rachel is will be graduating in the fall, and it's good to have her here. And then Sarah is from the budget policy as a budget policy analysis, and she. How long have you been doing this?
Retirement or just
Well,
3 years.
3 years. Okay. You know far more than I do, so I'm leaning heavily on you and legislative council. So thank you for all of those. I do want to recognize one other person, and that is Russell Hinton, who is the, did I get that? Hinton, Russell, is the president of GRSA. And thank you for being here and bringing a few people along with you. Would you raise your hand if you are part of this organization? Oh my gosh! I believe y'all have a quorum. Well, thank you so very much.
So while I served 13 years as a state auditor, I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of these folks that are here today and quite a few of them that aren't. But we look forward to working with the committee in any way.
Thank you. I don't think the other part is necessarily needed, but I'm going to do this just because it's kind of the part that we do that every year, or beginning of the first year of a session. And that is just a reminder that all physical bills must be dropped during the first year of the 2-year term, and there cannot be any action on those bills in the first year. Matter of fact, we can't even meet to start determining whether or not we order a physical bill until after the session is over. The committees will meet, both House and Senate will meet before July 1st to determine those bills that will go on for that physical note. And then after that, we will meet again, those physical notes are to be back to the committee by November the 1st. So that is the process. So any bills that have a physical note will not be considered during the first year. Probably everyone in here knows that, but when someone said, well, he didn't tell me, I wanted to clear that up. We have a number of people that are here today. Has already recognized several, but we have those that we work with year in, and when I say year in, the 40 days we're here, and then also while we're out of session, we have our opportunity to speak to those the retirement programs that are represented today. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to share, introduce yourself, and then share something that we don't know. Now, I'll share a little bit about maybe some current concerns that you have, and also if there might be some legislation that you see coming down the pike for us this year. So I'm going to start. I have a list up here. So Kelly and Jim, who I don't know who's going to speak for ERS, but I guess it's going to be Jim. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I'm Jim Potvin. I'm the Executive Director of the Employees Retirement System. I just want to say I very much look forward to working with all of you during this session. The Employees Retirement System of Georgia is responsible for the administration of a number of retirement programs for the state. In addition to the kind of flagship program, the ERS, we are also responsible for 4 other defined benefit programs, one for the legislature, one for the judiciary, for public school non-teaching employees, and for the Georgia Military Pension Fund. In addition, we are responsible for 3 defined contribution programs, a savings plan for part-time employees, and the state's 401k and 457 plans. Finally, we are responsible for the administration of a legacy term life insurance program that we call the Group Term Life Insurance Program, creatively enough. No new hires are allowed into that, but there's still about 80,000 members in that program as well. We are responsible for assets totaling approximately $16 billion, 13 billion of which are ERS assets, so that is by far our largest fund. ERS has about 60,000 active members currently, as well as 46,000 retirees. The public school system is our next largest defined benefit program. It's got about 36,000 active and 16,000 retirees. The 401k and 457 plans, which we refer to as the Peach State Reserves program, currently has about 67,000 total accounts. So these are very extensive programs. The Employees Retirement System has 3 benefit tiers. What we call the old plan was closed to new hires in 1982, and there are only a couple of hundred active employees still left in that plan. What we call the new plan actually closed to employees at the end of 2008. The current tier we refer to as the GSEPS tier is the hybrid defined benefit plus 401k program that current employees are hired into. And approximately 40% now of the state's active workforce are members of the GSEPS tier as opposed to the other tiers. I report to a 7-member board. Funding ratios for the various defined benefit programs. 2 of our programs are actually better than 100% funded, both for the judicial and legislative folks. The public school employees system is just a hair under 80%. The Georgia Military Pension Fund is 40%, but that is in an asset accumulation phase. It's a relatively new plan that's been going up every year. We slowly build it, and the ERS is funded at 71% as of the most recent actuarial report. As far as legislation is concerned, you should not expect to hear from me very often this year. Unless things change drastically, we only have 1 small bill that we're contemplating at this point, and we'll get to talk about that further on down the road. But I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anyone in the committee have a question they'd like to ask?
One of the questions that keeps coming up for me is with the 3 different plans, people are worried that the amount that's paid into GSEPs won't cover the people that are in the older plans. Is all of that handled separately, like between the old plan, the new old plan, and GSEPs?
There's 2 components to the contributions, well, really 3 components to the contributions that go into the plan. There's a small employee contribution, so obviously for each individual employee, they're covering their portion of their own benefits. The employer contributions, there's 2 components of that. There's what we call the normal cost, which is that portion which is attributable to any individual employee based on their accumulating service. So every one of us, as we gain years of service, add some cost to the system, and so that's part of what the state is required to pay in every year. Finally, there's the portion which is supposed to cover the unfunded accrued liability, so the fact that we're below 100% means that we have to make an extra payment in order to get ourselves back to the 100%. That is spread evenly across every active member, regardless of which plan they are in. So the intent is that from a funding standpoint, although some of the calculations are done separately, at the end of the day, it's all going toward the same pot, the same fund of money to amortize off that unfunded liability. Does that answer your question?
I think so. May I ask another question?
Certainly.
Thank you. In the public school employees retirement system, I also get an awful lot of questions about some of those employees are saying that the amount of money that they're paying for their health care is more than the retirement check that they are getting. Are there any, and I know the answer for ERS, but are there any COLAs built into that? Is there any help that we can give them with that? I think the cost of health care is kind of hitting everybody hard, but it especially hits the people in that particular group really hard. Is there anything that we can do to maybe be helpful to those folks?
There is the possibility of a COLA contemplated. Like the ERS, it is up to the public schools employees board to make the decision on whether or not to grant that COLA. Those conversations, as you're well aware, have gone the same for public schools as they have for ERS for the past several years. But that question is taken up every year, just as it is for our other systems. But there is a mechanism there for the board to say, yes, it's time to pay a COLA, and here's how much.
So what would it take for them to say yes? I mean, what needs to be in place? Because it's been a very long time since anybody's had a COLA.
Without a doubt. Just speaking only in general terms, because that's really all I
Right.
can do. I think the board needs to be satisfied with the current and projected future funding status of the plan. So when they feel like it is prudent to go ahead and pay that COLA, which will add some liability to the plan, that the plan can safely absorb that liability without a huge financial hit, without me having to come down here and ask for a much larger contribution from the state and that kind of thing.
Do you have any other questions?
I'm good right now. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On ERS, what funding ratio are we targeting? I mean, I see it's at 71.4%. What funding ratio would be ideal?
So the board adopted a funding policy at the end of 2013 where they explicitly stated the long-term goal for the plan is 100% funding target. So when the assumptions are made, when the calculations are done from an actuarial standpoint, they are done with the idea of amortizing the unfunded liability over a set period of time to where we get to 100% within that set period of time.
Do you know what that set period of time is?
25 years.
So it's 25. They're trying to get to 100 by 25 years.
Yes.
Okay. And how does that? Can I ask one more question? How does that compare to other states?
25 is.
I mean, the 71%.
The 71% is just about at the median for our peers.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
I have one more.
All right. Representative Butler?
When we went to GSEPs several years ago, we were told that this is what we needed to do because the younger employees like to move around a little more than staying at the same place for 25 years like David did. And so if, but that what we were going to, and that would make the money be flexible, that they could withdraw it when they leave and that kind of thing. But they also talked about, since the benefit was going to be a little different, that the pay would be increased. Now we know the number of employees has decreased significantly. Has the pay increased at all for any of those jobs that are covered by GSEPs, as they promised when they decided to do that? And how long has GSEPs been around?
Since the beginning of 2009. Coincided very closely with, obviously, the so-called Great Recession, the beginning of that time period. You know, as far as the state's budget picture, obviously you know as well as I that there hasn't been a lot of automatic raises built into the budget or anything like that for a number of years. Employees will still get promoted. Occasionally, the agencies will provide discretionary raises. Last year we had the 1% built into our budgets for merit-based targeted raises. But that's as far as that has gone to this point. As agency heads, we're given some leeway, but we do have to stay within the budgetary parameters as well.
So what I was getting around to is, are our salaries and the benefits for state employees comparable to other states and anywhere near private sector?
They're different. I mean, we were one of the first to adopt the hybrid type of a benefit structure. And actually, we've been working hard the last couple of years to try to make sure that people are taking advantage of the defined contribution portion as well as the defined benefit. So there still is a defined benefit. It's half of the percentage that it used to be. And so we need to encourage people to make up for that on the defined contribution side. We're making good progress on that. We did, I will be the first to say, the program got off to a slow start on that side, and so it raised flags for us. You'll recall legislation last year to increase the default contribution rate for new hires in order to get them at the savings rate required to receive the full state match. If people stay at that level, then it's my belief that they will more or less make up for that other half of the defined benefit portion. And it's the defined contribution which is the portable portion. So if they build a substantial nest egg in the 401k plan, that part of it will be portable in the way that was described.
If you don't mind, Representative Bruce, would you turn that mic so
This one?
that, yes, so make sure everyone in here. My friend, Senator Black.
On this funding ratio, what's the history of that in recent years?
The funded ratio has been in decline for, well, probably since the early 2000s. We were at 104% at the peak around 2000, 2001 timeframe, and it's been in decline since that time. I should knock on wood, but I believe that the 71% is going to represent, according to our projections, represents the low point, and that the next valuation will show a slight increase.
It's my understanding that the portion of the state's contribution is based on the cost of amortizing the unfunded mandate, and that is set annually?
That's correct. It's set annually 2 years in advance.
Pardon?
It's set annually, but with a 2-year lag. So the next valuation will be setting the rate for fiscal year 2017.
Could you get me those figures of how much this, what the unfunded mandate has been since 2000?
I'd be happy to.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Any other questions? Jim, thank you so much.
Thank you. I
for
appreciate it.
being here. Thank you. And I know we have, I think Jeff Ezell is here to speak. Is he already on 75 going to Ackworth? No, there he is. There he is. Would, if you would, you come to this.
Have a
this
seat.
well,
Yeah, that one will work. Too.
yeah, that'll work. I mean,
Well, either one.
I mean, we got high tech. We got high technology. All right. We don't have any wireless on.
I'm a
That's
little
all
older
right.
than Mr. Putman, so I'm going to sit down.
Okay.
Is that one working? I think it's good. Says WI.
Sorry. I won't touch it.
Does that mean every time I say something you don't want to hear? You're gonna
Yeah.
No, we'll hit the mute. Go right ahead.
I'm Jeff Ezell. I'm the Executive Director of the Teachers Retirement System. Been with the system since you were introducing people about how long they've been around. I've been with the system 31 and a half years, Executive Director for the last 15. So I guess that qualifies me as being one of the old folks around.
It certainly does.
It certainly does. I've prepared some information that I think each of you have. That's just some summary information about the system. I'm just going to touch on a few items here and then answer any questions that you may have about the system. TRS was established back in 1943, became operational in 45. We're a defined benefit plan, which means we pay out a benefit based upon a formula calculation that's years of service times a 2% multiplier times your 2 highest consecutive years salary. That's a benefit that's payable for life. person, when they retires, has the option to receive that in a max plan calculation, which would be that exact calculation I just described, or they can elect a survivorship option, in which they can pick a beneficiary. It can be anybody, and will reduce their benefit from an actuarial standpoint to provide the benefit for the retiree, and then unfortunately when they pass away it would go on to their beneficiary in some form or fashion that they had elected at retirement. We basically cover all employees in the public schools except those that might be specifically excluded, such as the cafeteria workers and bus drivers. We do cover those folks if they are in a managerial or supervisory position. We cover the employees of the Board of Regents unless they elected the Regents Optional Retirement Plan, which is a defined contribution plan. We also cover employees of the Technical College System unless they elected membership in the Employees Retirement System. They can make a one-time election when they're first hired. That's kind of the kind of who we are and who we cover. This next page you have in front of you has statistics as of today. We have 223,000 active members of TRS. We have a little over 109,000 members that we are making monthly benefits to. So far this year, we've paid out $1.9 billion in benefits to those retirees, and since we're halfway through the year, we're anticipating probably paying out close to $3.9 billion in benefits to those retirees. I just want to mention this. A lot of times people assume that the average or median person that enters the education profession does so right out of college at an early age of 22 or 24. But the fact is the median age of our members is 27. And that coincides with what we see today when people retire, because people with a normal retirement, which I'm going to define as 25 or greater years, retire with just over 30 years of service, and they're right at age 59, give or take a little bit. So that's perfectly in line with that median age of 27. 30 some odd years of working puts them right at that 57, 58, 59 age range. Our assets to the system at the end of December was $66.7 billion with a B. I checked as of yesterday, and it was 66.6. So we've had a lot of ups and downs during the month of January, and we basically even out. For the fiscal year, our return is 2%. Past fiscal year, the return was 17.2%. So we're hoping this year improves some, and for the rest of the year, and hopefully it will. I mentioned how much benefit payments we pay out. Last fiscal year, we took in $640 million in member contributions. Those are the folks out there working. And then we took in $1.3 billion in employer contributions. Now that employer contribution split into two parts. It's the state-funded portion through the QBE formula typically, and then there's the local share, and just talking about K through 12 folks. And that split is right at 56% state funding, and then 44% local funding. So the $1.3 billion we received in fiscal year 14, $730 million of that was from state funds that are passed through the employer through QBE. From a valuation standpoint, like what Jim was saying, our evaluation for a given fiscal year, it takes 2 years before it hits the budget cycle. And just to give you the example, the 2013 valuation, which is our most recent, is the one that drives the 2016 contribution rates. And to try to help explain why it's 2 years, that 2013 valuation cannot be prepared till after we close out fiscal year 13, get all of our financial reports, so it's not presented to the board until May of 2014. Obviously, a decision then couldn't impact the 15 budget because we're already past the 15 budget cycle. You know, we're just starting 2 months, so it sets the budget for the following budget year. So 2013 sets 16. When we do the 2014 valuation, then that will set the 2017 contribution rates. Now hopefully that helps a little bit just on that timing, timing difference. TRS is funded at 81.1% as of fiscal year 2013. We're anticipating for 14 that it's going to be that same amount, plus or minus just a little bit. It looks like we'll be flat for that period, but that's still looking at very preliminary numbers, and those numbers could change. To kind of piggyback a little bit on the questions that were asked Jim, about history of the funding ratio, and which we can provide that if Senator Black would like to see that, is I'm more concerned about whether we receive our required employer contribution rate than I am the funding percent. Funding percent is important, don't get me wrong, but as long as we receive the employer contribution rate, and Jim explained how that's made up, it's 2 parts. One, that's the normal cost to provide an additional year of service for an active person, and then a payment of the unfunded liability, which is treated like a mortgage. And ours is 30 years as opposed to 25. That's the period the board adopted when they adopted their funding policy. So as long as we receive that contribution rate, the member rate and that employer rate, we're providing for additional service and paying down in a structured fashion that unfunded liability. And as long as that occurs, 100% is nice, and that's what our funding policy indicates we strive for. But 100%, 90%, 80%, as long as we get that required contribution rate, we're in good shape. And the state of Georgia has always paid to the retirement system, the required contribution rate. And with that, I'll answer any questions that anybody might have. There's a little more information just on what's in the budget, and then I have a 10-member board that I report to. As opposed, I think Jim said his was 7. Okay.
I'll go first this time, Debbie. As far as the funding ratio, I know that we're working over the next 30 years, and the market seems to be going up. Why is the funding ratio going down the last 2 years? Is it just because the liabilities are jumping faster these last 2 years?
We're still feeling the impact of the recession period,
Mm-hmm.
in which the returns were low and the markets went down.
Mm-hmm.
We do a average on our market value to try to keep the employer rate as consistent as possible. If we did market every year, that rate would bounce around, and it'd be very difficult for y'all to budget as a state to budget those funds to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we amortize those gains and losses. Currently, it's for a 5-year period.
Okay.
So we're still bringing in technically, some losses that may have been in the past.
Okay.
Okay.
And one more question. What rate are we using for that?
Our long-term.
Yeah, long-term rate.
Discount rate 7.5%.
Okay. Thank you.
One question here. The actuaries, if they changed to reflect the plateau in salaries that we've been paying we've got a system that was, I'll say, built up over a period of years where we had continually escalating salaries. So we had the people paying in on higher salaries, but the people drawing out on lower salaries. But now for the last 12 years in particular, we've had pretty much a level salary structure. And so we got people retiring now, and on the same salaries, retiring on the same salaries as we're paying right now. That should have caused for some change in the actuarial numbers. Has that been factored in?
We do, we're required to do an annual valuation every year. And then every 5 years, we do what's called an experience study. That's where we look at all the assumptions that are used by the actuary that the board adopts. And those are assumptions like there are retirement numbers, you know, how do they compare in the past 5 years? Our assumptions to what currently happened, salary increases, how did they compare? Rates of withdrawal, rates of retirement. There's a lot of different factors that we look at on a 5-year basis and adjust it when it's necessary to adjust it. You don't want to adjust those type of assumptions on an annual basis because you could have I'll say an aberration that it just occurs in 1 year but doesn't in others. I think part of what you're asking is our new members coming into the system, or our total member count has dropped a little bit, if not gone flat, because of the recession and the effect.
No, what I'm referring to is the salaries that the retirees retired on, compared to the salaries that the active employees are paying in on. That has narrowed drastically in the last 10, 12 years compared to the history.
I may be honest with you, Senator, I'm not really sure what you're asking me.
Okay, you go back prior to the last 12 years. You had people that was on retirement drawing salaries that were some of them less than half what the people that were actively working were paying in on. So you had people paying in on $50,000 salaries and people retiring on $25,000 salaries. So you had the money coming in on the $50,000 side, the money going out of $25,000. Now that has leveled out very much so.
I'm still not quite sure.
Retirement check was less than payroll.
I think that it's, as I understand the question, boy, these are sensitive, that what has been typically more being paid into the plan has now become less. So what I think that I was hearing is that there was an expectation that those that were presently employed were paying in for the benefits of those who are retired. Is that what I understand the question?
The incoming contributions that were based off current salaries over the years has been escalating, contributing more money, and you get in a situation where you have that level of salaries, and the people that are drawing out are drawing out based on let's just say $50,000 salary, but the people that are putting in on a $50,000 salary.
Okay, well, let me attempt this way. The money we collect today is not paying benefits we're paying today.
I think that's the question.
When a person first day of work, and they start making contributions, and we get contributions from the employer, we base those contributions on that person retiring 30 years from now. So the benefit payments we're making today is on money that we have already collected in contributions and have received investment earnings on to provide those benefits. So the people working today and the money we're collecting on them today is to pay for the benefits when they retire out into the future. Is that?
I understand all that, and all of this is going to be factored in whenever they're doing the actuarial study. But I'm telling you, if you have been collecting in over the years, and first off, what is about 70% of the money that you have coming in comes in from the investment?
For the past 10 years, about 70% is investment income.
Now, 30% is coming in through contributions. Is determined by the salaries that people pay.
30% coming in is based upon the salaries that are being paid, correct. The amount of the contributions that determine that 30% is based upon our actuarial assumptions on what we assume that person's going to do over their career as a teacher.
What I'm saying is if you get more money coming in every year, and you're doing this, but you get more money to invest to earn on, and all of a sudden you hit that plateau, you level out on the incoming, you get the same amount of money to invest. I suspect that would be one of the factors required that your amortization figure for that unfunded mandate is continuing to increase when the stock market is actually, I mean, we're way faster than the stock market drop off that started in 08.
We are. I mean, the lowest point in the recession, we were down to $37 billion, and we're up to 66 now. So there's been a huge recovery because of the economy. The problem is, if the recession would not have occurred, we would have assets in excess of probably $75 billion right now, and we don't have that because of that recession. That's part of the reason why one of the reasons why the unfunded liability has risen, the funding percent, dropping a little bit. It's also why we've been increasing our contribution rates for both the member and the employer. We've maxed the member out to 6%. So now any increase flows in through the employer.
What I've been looking at is a steady increase in that factor to amortize that unfunded mandate. Does it reflect the stock market? It's dropped off, but it's rebounded.
But again, we're still having to pay for that drop off that occurred. We're having to make up for that.
Could this be simply if you have a huge hole, and you have a limited amount of dirt, you can't fill it up all at one time. And what I hear you're saying is that our returns on the investments are gradually filling that hole, so that we can get back to the place where we're being able to fund it as we once were.
Yes.
So that's some of Bartow County's
I understand
explanation.
That, you got the unfunded mandate, and you amortize it over 30 years. But my assumption is that if this X number of dollars is taken, and you amortize that, you take the same amount each year to amortize that, pay back that loss that we get back there when the stock market drops. Is that all?
We the way we currently do the amortization, we switched to a closed period. So starting with 13, whatever our unfunded liability was, we amortize it over a 30-year period, which means in 14 we have only 20 years left to amortize that amount, and then any increase that occurs during the year 14 will amortize over a 30-year period. The goal is in 30 years we would have it paid off in a similar fashion that ERS has stated over a 25-year period.
Well, let's do this. The two of you get together and
We'll figure it out
talk
between
about
the
it.
two of us.
I think between two of you can. And if there's no other short questions and responses, thank you so much, Jeff.
I want to thank each of you. The system's in good condition, and it's because of y'all sitting here at the table and your predecessors, except for Tyrone, he's been here forever anyway, that have always wanted to take care of the retirement system and take care of the educators in the state of Georgia, and I will speak for them, and one big thank you to all of you because of that.
And my wife appreciates that, since she's a retired teacher. Thank you so much. We have someone to represent the firefighters. Yes, please. And then any other representatives from any of the other retirement plans here that would like to speak. I'm not forcing you to. So, any others would like to speak? It's a. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Morgan Wurst with the Georgia Firefighters Pension Fund, and we're a voluntary plan, a defined benefit plan. We're coming into our our 60th year. We started in 1955. Our contributions come primarily from a insurance premium tax on property and casualty insurance, as well as dues. Currently, the fund is around $750 million, and we have about just over 13,000 active members and about 4,600 retirees. We pay out about $40 million annually to these retirees. Our funding status as of June 30th, 2014 is 80%. We use a 6.5% assumed rate of return on our investments. We, as I said, we're supplemental. It's available to all firefighters, volunteer and career firefighters who meet certain eligibility requirements. This year, we hope to pass some legislation. Most of it is just code cleanup, as well as some that will implement some stiffer penalties on members who intentionally defraud the fund, as well as we would like to increase the number of named beneficiaries for our death benefit, as well as our 10-year and certain option. I also have with me David Luther, who is our Director of Field Services, and Tracy Wells, who is our Assistant Treasurer. She helps me on the investment side. And also here is my predecessor, Jim Menard. And I'm here. I've been with the fund for a little over 5 years, 8 months in my current role. Yes, sir.
Is the firefighters fund the one that we changed it to allow alternative investments a few years ago?
Yes.
Is that the one we did?
Yeah.
Should we be getting a report pretty soon that kind of tells us how it's doing, or did you guys make any investments in the last year?
We made one commitment back in the fall. We've made a total of $33.5 million in commitments.
Mm-hmm.
When we originally presented the alternatives, there was discussion about what invested meant, because our alternatives are solely in private equity, which involves making a commitment and then paying further on down the line. And our worry was that 5% would prevent us from ever really hitting that 5%. Mm-hmm. And that's actually proven to be true. We're 3 years into the program and are just under 2% actually invested money out the door. Mm-hmm. But, we continue to, we're at the point now where we're unlikely to make any more commitments until we start seeing some more money coming back. And we're starting to, but that's just the investment process with private equity.
And what is the return that we're seeing on those right now?
I want to say so far it's around 15%.
Okay.
But it's really, some of it is just based off of valuations. Actual,
gotcha. Mm-hmm.
The IRR. It's almost too early in the program to really, look at it and for it to be a decision guiding.
Gotcha. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just want the name of those that you're getting 14-15% investment off of.
Well, keep in mind the regular markets have done quite well. In some instances,
I'll just
better.
Take your recommendations.
We can speak later.
All right. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? All right. Thank you so very much. I'm just going to go down through my list very quickly. Anyone here that represent the judicial retirement, the magistrate? Right there. I knew I saw him. And he brought a book with him. My, you gonna read to us?
Just in case we were delayed.
Okay.
My name's Bob Carter. I'm the executive director of the Peace Officers Annuity and Benefit Fund. And as that, under our contract arrangements, we also did administrative work on 3 other small boutique retirement funds. One is the Chief Magistrate's Retirement Fund, Clerks of Superior Court Retirement Fund, and the Probate Judges Retirement Fund. Those 3 funds are so small because it only covers the elected officials in each county, so there's maximum 159 members in each of those. So it would be not administratively good for them to create their own staff to manage these funds. So a contract arrangement with the Peace Officers Fund is how we operate those other 3 funds. The Peace Officers Fund is by far the largest, and we were created in 1950 by the General Assembly of Georgia and started operating in 1951. We're a supplemental retirement plan and cover all levels of law enforcement in the state of Georgia. You must work for a city, a county, or the state of Georgia in a certified law enforcement position, and you must work full-time. You can be a member of the fund for up to a maximum of 30 years in benefits, and you must be age 55 to draw benefits. And so with that said, we currently are funded at 93.5%, and we have a little over 13,500 active law enforcement officers in the fund, and we also have 4,751 retirees. We pay out $2.2 million a month to law enforcement officers and their families out there. I've got the greatest job in the world. It's more like a calling than it is a job, because almost on a monthly basis, we get a handwritten note, especially from the widows, that says, "Bob, thank you for this check. It means the difference in whether I buy groceries or pay the power bill." So in our office, we have a staff, a total of 10. We can see that we're making a positive impact on people's lives on a daily basis. The fund is broadly diversified in investments. In this last year, we had a rate of return of 17.3%, which was pretty standard across the board. The other 3, the assets in the Peace Officers Fund is about $700 million. The Magistrates Retirement Fund that you started with is probably the newest and probably the last defined benefit plan that I think the General Assembly will create. It was created in 2006 to cover chief magistrates in the magistrate courts in this county. Right now they have assets of about $18 million, and we have 5 retirees. They all came into the retirement plan, no matter how long they had been a chief magistrate, with 0 vesting. So they had to have 8 years in the fund to draw retirement benefits in age 60. So created in 06, 8 years later, 2014, July 1, was the first time we've had a retiree. So we have 5 retirees now. That has been fun to create a retirement plan and file for their tax-exempt status and their federal ID number and see it grow from $0 when they created it to around $18 million now. Clerks of Superior Court has been around for almost as long as the Peace Officers Fund. It was the second fund as a supplemental plan right behind the Peace Officers Annuity and Benefit Fund. It covers the 159 Superior Court clerks all over the state of Georgia. I have never understood exactly what a clerk's court did, but let me tell you, it is getting more and more complicated every day. When we see talk to the board and talk to the various clerks out there, the electronic world has more complicated, I think, their world than simplifying it. But their fund is funded right at 100%. They have about $105 million in assets. And also the Probate Judges Fund covers the elected probate judge, and they are truly the court of the people. When I talk with them, it's pretty easy to get somebody to be guardian or custodian of the assets of a family, but then when you find somebody to be the custodian of grandma, it's a whole different world. They're easy to take the assets, but nobody wants to take the physical custody of an elderly parent or elderly sister or brother or whatever. Their fund has about $75 million in it now, with all 159 judges as members. The Peace Officers Fund will be the only fund, I think, coming to you this year, which will be a physical bill that you'll be considered next year. We're to the point that we have to find additional revenues that I talked with the chairman about earlier this year. We're the only people in the world in a retirement fund that more is not better. More members mean that we get the same amount of money from fines and forfeitures, but yet I've got to slice that pie thinner and thinner. What we're facing is a lot of the cities and counties have recognized that by paying the members' contributions, which is $20 a month, they can offer a benefit to their local law enforcement officers and use that as a recruiting tool to a city or county next door that doesn't offer that additional benefit to them. So I'm having cities and counties enroll their entire departments. Next Tuesday and Thursday, I'll be down in Newton County Sheriff's Office their county has decided to pay all of their members' dues for them. So we'll be enrolling another 151 members. So with that growth in membership that we're having, it is outgrowing the growth of the income from the fines and forfeiture money. So what my board has proposed, that we look and follow the example of what the firefighters has done in the past, but instead of property and casualty insurance premium tax, we'd like to take a look at automobile liability premium tax of 0.25%. So a $500 insurance policy on an annual basis, it costs the public out there $1.50 to add on to the retirement fund. This will give us money to sustain the growth in the fund and maybe sometime have another cost of living increase. We haven't increased our rate of contribution we haven't increased the benefits since '08. And so we'll be looking for you for that for this coming years. But we think it's very necessary. We want to continue to support our law enforcement officers the way we have in the past. Any questions you might have, I'd be glad to entertain them on any of the 4 funds, Mr. Chairman.
Have any questions? No questions. Well, thank you, Bob. You
Thank
did a
y'all for the
great job,
opportunity.
and we'll be looking into that. You had discussed it with me earlier in the year. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Any other retirement or anyone would like to speak to the committee before we adjourn? I can't believe we did all this in 1 hour. I can't believe we've been here an hour. But thank you for those who are representing retirees, those of you taking care of the money of the retirees. We appreciate what you're doing. We appreciate that we have 2 different houses here that has an opportunity to look and see what we can do best to serve those that serve us. So if there is nothing else, Mr. Chairman, would you like to adjourn?
I'll be glad to adjourn. Thank you.
Okay. Then go ahead.
Okay. We will adjourn. I will say that Senator Harper was in here. I believe he just left, though. We didn't get to introduce him, the Senate's most eligible bachelor. We should have. I think he has the largest landmass in Senate district, which he covers in his helicopter. So he's a great senator and head of public safety now for us. And I think you got a House member come in if you want to.
Oh, yes. This is one of our favorite House members. And introduce yourself, tell where you're from and what you do.
Good afternoon.
Well, we'll go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Patty James Bentley, State Representative for House District 139. Represent Taylor, Macon, and Dooley counties in the south portion of Peach County. And I live in Taylor County, the home of the Georgia Strawberry Festival. So we love for all the retirees to come on down to Taylor County in April. Yeah. And he asked me to tell you what I do. My husband and I, we're in the mortuary business. Yeah. Yeah. I know you don't want to come. We do have some folks that just come hang out at the mortuary. Some retirees, they just come hang out. So, but I'm so glad to serve on this committee, and I thank all of you for what you do, and we appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Yeah, they're the last ones to let you down.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I thank Chairman Battles for hosting this meeting. And with that, we'll stand adjourned. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,